All right. Welcome back to Open Waters Podcast. I'm host Matt McKean here with fellow host Connor Helm and this episode's guest, Alexander Merz. How you doing today, Alex?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you guys doing today?
Doing
Good.
well. Doing
Good.
well.
Hanging in there. Tough Tuesday. I gotta lie. I was just talking about it, but yeah, tough Tuesday. Long hours here.
All working hard. Yep.
That's the marine industry, man. Come on.
Yeah.
So the other Open Waters host, Colin Sheehan, and I, back in October 2019 now, we were at the Propeller Club and Virginia Maritime Association oyster roast on the USS Wisconsin, this retired Navy ship they have down here in Norfolk. And we were standing on there. It was a networking event. We were drinking the Virginia orange crushes and eating, raw oysters and roasted oysters at the oyster roast. And I was like, Colin, that guy over there, I recognized him. Do you recognize him? And he was like, who? And I was like, there's this guy over there talking to somebody. And I swear to God, he was the one who spoke about international maritime business at the Mass Maritime Open House I went to in 2013, being like a senior in high school, or like 2012, a junior in high school. And, we ended up going over and talking to you, and sure enough, that was you, someone who's largely to blame for all of this. And for me choosing,
I'm not sure whether I should say welcome or I'm sorry with all this, but I mean,
yeah. So with
point,
that,
hopefully you enjoy it.
Thank you and welcome to the podcast.
All right. Well, thank you for having me. I mean, it's always fun to reach out to those that are either just getting into the industry, have been in the industry for a little bit, looking for a change. I mean, most of the time I find that there's not a lot of general knowledge of what people do in the marine industry. Everybody's like, oh, you're in the marine industry, you must be a sailor. No. I thought about it. I mean, no, I switched over.
People are like, oh, you go to Mass Maritime. Like, when are you shipping out? Like, you went to Mass Maritime. When are you shipping out again?
I'm shoreside. I'm done with that. I'll do day trips on tugboats, but
yeah,
you're not going to see me pack an overnight bag or anything longer than that. So yeah,
Awesome.
it look at it compared to finance, because I mean, international maritime business, we can probably closely relate to them. Everybody knows what you do in finance. Like, oh, you're in finance. Are you in stocks? Are you in insurance? Are you an advisor? Are you an accountant? You say you try to push that with the maritime field. They're like glazed over.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And then so I think it's interesting because you were probably the most senior person that we've had on this podcast. I mean, senior as in like you've had the most experience out of maritime. So I think this is going to be a cool episode because you provide like a different point of view to our viewers as far as like what you can do with your career, how you can move up shoreside, and work your way up within your company, change different companies, get experiences, and you've largely stayed. You have stayed in the tug and barge aspect of the maritime business, and it's big. It is the biggest probably U.S. maritime like sector is the tug and barge. So it makes sense that a lot of maritime grads or people who didn't go to the academies but looking to get into the maritime industry may end up in a similar position that both you and I ended up right out of college. I was talking to you before the call, and I started off working as a dispatcher for a tugboat company, doing crewing and scheduling and dispatching and calling all the crews and tugs and telling them what they should be doing as far as jobs and things of that nature. So I would love to just kind of hear you talk through like your progression, like talk about your time at the academy, and then kind of just work up to where you're at now, and your experiences, because now you're not only like an individual contributor, you're not only working shoreside, in a department, like you run a department, right? Like you're in charge of people. So that's a more senior role, which I'd love to hear more about.
Okay, so I'll start off with the the time at Maritime. I mean, I'm a converted business kid. My after freshman C term, when everybody had to go on C term. Now I guess that's changed. Um, I wanted to be a decky. I went to school. I was like, I'm going to be a decky. Like, all right, cool. I'm going to be a decky. Then sophomore fall hits, and I'm like, I don't want to be a decky, and this isn't fun. Like, I look at the statistics, and I'm like, man, 90% of those that get a license end up shoreside within 10 years. And I'm looking at it as like, okay, cool. So I'll make a lot of money coming out because the license majors inherently make more because they're gone more. But the chances of me being in the 10% versus the 90%, I'm going to be shoreside anyway. So let me skip that. Let me struggle for the first couple of years out of Maritime and go shoreside. Because by the time these deckies and engineers that are in my class, by the time they come shoreside, I'm 9 years ahead of them on the pay scale. So they beat me early on, but I win in the long run. And really, it's that competitive spirit that has probably pushed me to where I'm at. Because, it's all about winning. Everybody wants to get the W.
Yeah.
So I switched over to business my sophomore winter. So I had to take the classes, get caught up into the business program, progressed into the business operations officer, which was cool. That kind of was the ignition point for me to get involved with kind of guiding the next generation, those that are behind me. Like, somebody's always reached down and back to me to pull me forward. I kind of want to do the same thing. So that's kind of how all of this and me coming across you guys in the open houses. That's kind of our first interaction. And then senior year hits, you get off of the senior C term, have a great time, and reality sets in. I'm a senior. I'm graduating. I don't have school to go to in the fall. I'm going to have to do something about it. And being a smart little business kid, I'm looking at the market. Okay, what's the U.S. flag market doing? Because for the last 2 years, it's been a progression down. Maritime does not follow the stock market. I mean, the business of ships is independent of it all of itself. I mean, yeah, it'll track oil and it'll track storms on a small scale, but on a large scale, the two don't really match up very well. We lag behind the market. So I was like, man, I'm graduating in a really bad market, and I'm competing against 16 other business kids at the time to find a job. We're all going to the same job fair.
And that's how
We
big
all
your
have-
class was. That's how big your class was, 16.
Yeah, there were 17 in total,
Nice.
including myself.
Yeah.
It wasn't until 2 years after us that we saw the big boom of the blue taggers.
What?
That's when they kind of doubled up to, I think at the time it was 37, 38. So 2 years after our class, it doubled its size.
And real quick, what year did the business program start?
Off the top of my head, I want to say the first graduate was 2001, 2002. Brad McCoy. I think he's still doing marine insurance. But I mean, if there's any maritime grads that want to reach out to the OG business kid, he's the guy. I mean, he'll listen to you and at least point you in the right direction.
Yeah, that's it. 2001, 2002. That sounds about right.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
We've come a long way. That's for sure. What was I think my class size was above 50 for sure. And yeah. I mean, we experienced the same things, right? 50 kids going to career fair, 50 kids trying to get a job. I was in a little bit of a different situation because like you, I did winter and summer classes because again, competitive spirit, like you were just talking about. I was just I'm also from New Jersey. So I was paying out-of-state tuition, which is a lot more expensive than the in-state tuition. So saving a little bit of money that way. And also I felt that I was getting a jump start on everyone else. I can be like, hey, there was only like 3 or 4 of us that graduated a semester early. So when I was at that career fair, that career fair before I graduated, I felt like I had a little bit of a competitive advantage against everyone else who graduated like on time. So
Exactly, because I mean, you're coming out of maritime, and you have to realize you're not special. There are every other single classmate has the exact same pedigree as you, outside of maybe you took a little bit different course load in electives and did a little bit different on your internships, but largely you are the same person. It's amazing how similar, as I'm reviewing resumes, everybody seems to be the same. I see my resume format that I made when I was at Maritime. I see Maritime kids still using it. I'm like, guys, I don't want to be the old guy, but that was 10 years ago.
yeah,
Y'all gonna have to like change it up a little bit, get fresh with it. I mean, and that leads to the whole coming out of Maritime. If you want to have that job in hand, that freshman promise of first major to get the job placement numbers, you got to work for it. You have to distinguish yourself on your resume. You have to customize your resume for the intended audience. I have 4 different resumes at any given point in time, depending on who I may end up applying to. And I keep them current at all times because I never know when something's going to pop up. But you got to be driven to that level, because as a future employer, for some of you that are watching this, you have about 60 seconds of my attention before I either like, oh my God, this guy or girl needs so much help. I'm just going to sit and do the resume and help with them get there. Or I'm going to call them up for an interview, or I'm going to just move on to the next one. 60 seconds, that's really all you get. And then it's, in a boxing terminology, punches and bunches. Apply everywhere. I mean, I'm sure you guys can agree. At age 21, was your first job really what you wanted to do?
the answer to that for me was no. That's why I ended up switching over shortly after graduation.
Exactly. So, I mean, don't be afraid to get your foot in the door somewhere, anywhere. Hopefully it's somewhere cool. Like my first job was in London as a broker, not nearly anything what I'm doing today. And it was in like, it was London, man, 22 years old. Of course, I'm going to take the job offer that sends me overseas for a year. Taking it, because I can always do something else afterwards. But that's my biggest recommendation to what we're in April. So we have a graduating class. No, we're in May. We have a graduating class next month.
Yep.
So if you guys, please, if you hear nothing else in this podcast, if you are not sending out 5 or 6 customized resumes a day, you are behind. And if you are not taking a job offer that might not be at the price point or location that you want, and you're going to sit back and wait for that perfect job to come along, you're going to be the last person to have a job. And I'm sorry to break it to you, people want their student loan money 6 months after you graduate. So don't be afraid to jump into the industry, any part of the industry, and then figure out, hey, I really do like my first job. Fantastic. Or, hey, it's not for me. Brokerage, not for me. Like, there's no harm, no foul. I mean, you can change jobs. You're not set into that for the rest of your career.
Yeah, and I totally agree. And I often go back to Mass Maritime, similar to you in the way that I like to just give back, because that's exactly what happened to me. I was a freshman. I had squad leaders. I had just other people in the business program who took interest in me and my professional development. So for me, I feel like giving back is just like the best thing to do. And who knows, this person that I'm talking to right now, that's a current student, may end up being my boss because they're a superstar, right? Or something crazy. They might start their own company, and who really knows? So for me, going back to Mass Maritime, and a lot of the times I talk about me and coming out of college and taking my first role. And for me, I was living, like I said, I was living in New Jersey, and I went to school in Massachusetts. And it's no surprise that a lot of the companies that are hiring shoreside positions at Mass Maritime are kind of in that New England area. And I didn't really have any interest in staying in New England. Probably that was probably short-sighted. I probably should have just opened up my options to everyone. But so I was at the career fair and looking at companies. I wasn't even looking at what they were hiring, because you know how they always say, we're looking for techies, we're looking for engineers. So I wasn't even looking at that. I was just looking at what's the company, what do they do, where are their offices. That's exactly what I was looking at. And so I ended up coming up on a tug company based out of New Jersey, kind of far from where I lived. I was driving in an hour and a half to and from, so a 3-hour total transit, living at home, trying to save some money. And then I ended up, like, I had a few job offers out of college, and that was kind of because I was, like I said, I graduated a little bit early. I was super proactive on sending resumes out everywhere. And then I ended up having a few offers. And this company that I took, it was my best offer. Was it the best experience that I possibly could have had? Who knows? But I'm glad that I took that experience. Like you said, I'm glad I just jumped into it, even though it wasn't the best as far as my commute time. It wasn't the best. It wasn't the most like sexy role, right? Everyone always talks about, like, everyone wants to be the broker at Mass Maritime. We talk about this, like everyone wants to be the broker, because it's like it is kind of like that similar, like that finance role, like that it's
Everybody
just,
wants to be the Gordon Gekko of ships.
yes,
Come on, man.
yes, exactly. So ended up taking that role, and before a year was up, I realized that it wasn't something that I was interested in. And so I was a little bit nervous, because I was like, what is this going to look like to my next employer on my resume? What is this 9-month stint that I did going to look like? I don't want to look like I'm a quitter, or I wasn't a good fit for this role. So I had to kind of weigh that in my decision. And ultimately I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to switch my role. I'm going to go into a different industry, still in like the maritime sector, still doing shipping, but no longer doing tug and barge work, and now doing freight forwarding. So, which is completely different. But so that's kind of my story to the cadets when I talk to them, is that, I chased the money, and it wasn't exactly what I was interested in. And maybe had I not, I would have had that 9 months in my current role, in my current company, because I could have just started and maybe made a little bit less money, but had grown faster, which is big. And something you got to look at when you're looking at roles is, how fast can you grow?
What's my promotion potential?
Yes, exactly. And joining a high growth company as a young person is definitely more attractive. At least it was for me, someone who like always wanted to change things and make things better. That was really important to me. And I didn't feel like in my first role, and this isn't against them at all, but I just didn't feel like they were as accommodating to me in my like really wanting to grow super fast and continue my education and do things like that. So it's interesting to hear you say that, because there's a lot of parallels between your experience and mine.
Yeah, I mean so hearing that that change and make things better has piqued my interest, because I want to caution fresh grads. So we've moved past your senior spring. Now you're in your first role. Be very careful with what you do and what you say and who you say it to. So my senior spring, Dr. Ghosh was gracious enough to let me do a presentation with the guy I went to maritime with. We're both from Virginia Beach. We both went to the same high school. And now I get to go travel with my best friend to Istanbul, Turkey, and do a presentation on a paper I wrote at my internship. So we're in Istanbul. I'm looking at this crowd of people from all over the world. I'm not recognizing a single face except for Dr. Ghosh sitting in the middle, intentionally trying to hide herself. So I saw you, Dr. Ghosh.
Shout out Bonnie.
Yeah,
Future
shout out
guest.
Bonnie.
Future guest.
So I saw so many different faces, and I didn't recognize one of them when I reported to my first desk in London. So I was working the Atlantic Basin Panamax size ship, dry cargo. The guy from the tanker desk next to mine, he's the lead guy on the tanker in London at the third largest interbank dealer in the world. He comes over and says, "Hey, you were in Istanbul, weren't you?" legit 22 years old looking at this guy who's got 25, 30 years experience. He's wearing a $35,000 Rolex. I was like, yeah, I was. How do you know about that? It's like, I was there. This industry is so small.
Yeah.
Be careful with what you say, who you say it to, because it's worldwide, but it's a very tight-knit community. If you don't know the person, you know somebody who knows somebody, and we're within, I would say, 3 degrees of separation before we're getting real facts about who this person is. So be careful with what you do, what you say, and don't be, I'm not going to temper the hard chargers. Absolutely do so. Do it tactfully.
Yeah.
You
Totally
guys remember when you're in 8th grade going into 9th grade, what it's like to be the freshman again. And then your senior year of high school, you think you're big and bad. You're like, man, I'm cool. And then you're a freshman in college and you're like, I'm not cool.
You're a cadet candidate.
Yeah, you're like, I'm a youngie. Like,
The least-
what does that mean? Who are you?
Yeah.
You're doing that exact same transition in your career. So yes, make waves, but don't go and try to upset the apple cart in doing so. Like, you can come in and you can be outspoken as long as you're intelligent about it. Before you say something, you better be able to back up your facts, Jack, and be able to, if you can argue it intelligently. So I've had a really intelligent coworker. Like, this guy was Goodwill Hunting level smart, but he could not talk to the boss. I'm not nearly as smart as this kid, but I connected with the boss really well because I would ask questions, and I learned my approach to getting changes is a Socratic method. I would ask my boss question after question after question until it has led to my idea. But the boss is like, oh yeah, why aren't we doing that? I don't know. I kind of just walked you into it, but whatever. The other guy, he came in, he was like, we're doing this wrong. It's inefficient. We need to be doing this. He was right, but he was wrong with how he did it. So caution to those that are young and hard charging. Do it smartly.
Yeah. I'll concur on that because like reflecting on my experience, I 100% did go in and I wasn't like, we need to change this. We need to reinvent the tug and barge industry. You know, like I wasn't saying that, but I was certainly like, you know, I was trying to, I felt like I was coming into a role because this role, like I said, I was looking, I was at the career fair. They weren't looking to hire me. Right. I just went up to them. I said, hey, I'm in I'm local. I'm in this program. I think I could provide value. That's a big thing, providing value. And they made this role for me. But there wasn't clear what was I going to do? Like there really wasn't those clear guidelines. So that's kind of where that came from, was a little bit of confusion as far as like what I'd be doing. And then that's what ultimately led to, you know, like me being like super proactive in trying to do different things within our department, which maybe that's not what they wanted me for. They wanted me to do the role at which we, like I just said, we didn't really know what that role was. So it was an interesting experience. Like I would not change it for the world. It ultimately led to me getting the role that I am in currently, which I really, really enjoy. So those kind of experiences, you know, they're invaluable. So yeah, great advice for sure. I would concur with that 100%. So so we're talked about not maritime, and then let's kind of talk about your professional career, like where you went to Moran after you were in London. How was your experience with them? And then also Norfolk Tugs, which I work with indirectly with some of the container operations out of Norfolk into inland and into Richmond. So would love to hear about your experience on that as well.
So once I figured out that I'm probably not quite fit to be a broker, Moran happened to be one of the customers I had as a broker. So that was an easy in, and I had to apply to them before, and I didn't get the job for operations coordinator. Lo and behold, 45 days later, and that's after going through the whole gamut of interviews. And you're bummed out. You're like, man, I really thought I had that one in the bag. Like everything's like it's right down the street from where I currently live. I don't have to move. Uh, it's an interesting field. Like pumped about having that opportunity. Super bummed that it didn't come through. 45 days later, I get a phone call saying, "Hey, are you still interested?" I'm like, "Absolutely. I haven't found another job yet." So they brought me back in for another round of interviews, and it was the abbreviated version because we had hit all the high points before. And they're like, "Okay, cool, come on over." Now I went from being a broker of dry bulk, thinking I knew everything about it by that point because I kind of just think I know it all by the time I figure it out. And they plopped me in the dry cargo inland barge role with another maritime grad, Jess Robbins. She graduated, I want to say 2007. So she sat right across from me. So it was cool having another alumni to kind of guide you through it. But I had no idea what I was doing. Like these barges were in my hometown, like my home harbor. I had no idea that that cargo transited the Chesapeake Bay, the Delaware River, and I had no idea about the Atlantic Intercoastal Waterway and how scrap steel was transported inland into North Carolina on bulk barges. So having that cool factor, like, man, I know this area. I was like, I know that town that I'm going by. I know, like, I've seen all this stuff. So now I'm putting two and two together from my childhood to now my professional career. I'm like, this is awesome. So we dealt primarily with scrap was our big one, pig iron, anything in the steel trade. We really focused on. And as kind of like a supplementary, we had a couple barges down in Texas between Baytown and Point Comfort, moving pet coke. So there's two barges down there. That's where I started interacting with Norfolk Tug because we had them on a full-time charter working there. And I was able to expand my knowledge of also Gulf Intercoastal Waterway. The pet coke dried up. I mean, people don't really want to move that cargo anymore. So those barges went away. We didn't have the renewal for the scrap run. So there's another 60% of my fleet going away. And I'm left with two barges moving flue gas, gypsum, synthetic gypsum, and limestone. Two barges. So I went from 10 barges to 2 barges. I see the writing on the wall of I can either move over to somewhere in Moran or I need to get out and go somewhere that's not expiring. So another tip to the people out there paying attention, your job's not guaranteed ever. I mean, if you're in charge of a division and that division dries up, you better have a backup plan, buddy, because they're not going to keep you just because they like you.
Yeah.
You have to serve some type of role. You have to bring, like what you said earlier, you have to bring value. And if there's no value there for you to give, well, that's where the layoff comes. And that's a scary thing to think about, but it's a very real thing that you guys need to be prepared for. But thankfully, Norfolk Tug was a vendor. So paying attention, I went from a broker to my customer and from Moran to a vendor. None of this was based on a cold call. Like this goes all the way back to maritime. None of it starts as a cold call. I applied to Oldendorf Carriers, a German ship owner. They couldn't hire me. They passed my resume to ICAP. ICAP hired me. And from that point, it's all been who do I know that has really gotten me where I'm at. So networking is hugely important. You never know when that person that you talk to today might be able to help you out in 2 years when you're trying to make a career change, you're trying to make a position change. Like some people are getting married and their spouse wants to move to the West Coast. I have connections on the West Coast. Just because if I need to move to the West Coast, I need to know somebody. Down in the Gulf, same thing. I need to know somebody down there. So network, and a customer, a vendor could always be your next great opportunity for an employment. Plus, Norfolk Tug got me back to my home port, which was awesome. I mean, after 4 years of Massachusetts, a year in London, 3 years in Connecticut, I was over it. I love snowboarding. Oh man, because no, not doing it again. Like if Maritime was like, hey, do you want to come up and do a guest lectureship? Like, yeah, in May and June and September.
Yeah.
Outside of that, not going that far.
Oh
north.
yeah. Yeah. I've definitely enjoyed the mild winters down here in Virginia. I don't know. Now that I'm moving back up to New York, I question it every couple of days. I'm like, really? I'm going cold.
It's not that bad. It's
Dude,
not that bad.
like, think about it. You get 3 months of every season. 3 months of winter.
Yeah.
The snow's here and it melts.
Yeah.
Like 2 days later, you're good. You don't even have to shovel. Norfolk Tug was an amazing experience for me. Seeing as I joined them in 2012. Was it 2012, 2014? 2014. I stayed with them from 14 till 18, and we went from a 10 boat fleet to an 18 boat fleet in 4 years. We were operating out of a double wide when I first got there, and shortly thereafter we moved to what we affectionately call the pickle dock. It was an old pickle factory that got converted. So super cool history, super cool office, very modern. It was a very fun and exciting time to see that fast growth, to see the owner and the CFO coordinate multi-million-dollar purchases with frequency. We bought 3 boats in a single year, and I mean, everybody's like, "Oh, boats expensive," but I really don't know how much that is. Like, tugboats for the ones that we were buying were probably about $5 million each. To make a small mom and pop company make $15 million in investment into assets in a single year, on top of moving location, on top of infrastructure upgrades, on top of everything else they were doing, was impressive. So that hard charger, want to change things, do things better attitude kind of fit in really well there. And sometimes it didn't. I've never been one to hold my tongue. That goes all the way back to the Maritime. Like, legit, I'm probably the only Reggie that got tapped their first weekend after freshman orientation for setting off the fire alarms in 5th code. Legit, like, just like, I'll do really well, and then I do something stupid. Do something really well, and then I'll do something stupid.
Yeah, you keep it interesting.
Yeah, I mean, pick it up a little.
That's a better way to put it. Keep it interesting.
Yeah, I mean, shake your boss up every once in a while and make him think that he's like, why does he work here? and then you prove your value by knuckling down and muscling through it. And that was a huge learning experience there at Norfolk Tug. One big thing was the constant drive for efficiency, not just in dispatching of tugs and crewing, but how we approached everything. It wasn't just, hey, make sure that the guys are running at a reduced RPM to save on fuel. It was make sure that they're running at reduced RPM to save on fuel, leaving at this specific time to take the most advantage out of tides and currents. While on top of that, paying attention to crew rest, crew morale, all that other stuff. Oh, and all their paperwork that they have to do. Pay attention to all of that because it all impacts each other. It's a fluid environment. We work in the marine environment. We work with water. You got to be just as fluid, and everywhere. You see everything. So that was a big driver and set me up for the success that I'm currently experiencing here at Intercoastal. So 4 years Norfolk Tug, and I decide one of 2 things is going to happen. I'm either going to leave the tugboat industry completely, the maritime industry, completely, because I had gotten to a point where it wasn't fun. I wasn't learning anything. I wasn't being challenged. I got bored, and when I get bored, that's when I do dumb stuff. So I was like, I need to make a change. So I was being heavily recruited to head back towards that finance side of things at Northwestern Mutual. I had a good buddy over there. I mean, he's like, listen, you've networked in the marine industry, and that is lacking when it comes to financial advisors. Is tugboaters don't know financial advisors because they take their money and they stuff it in their mattress. So you can really do well if you come over and play life insurance salesman with Northwestern Mutual. I was like, all right. So they put me through the full gamut there. And I was telling my former boss at Intercoastal, like he's the reason why I came over. I told him I was leaving the industry completely. Northwestern Mutual was courting me, giving me a decent offer. He's like, Alex, wait 24 hours. Let me talk to somebody. So he goes and talks to the owner of Intercoastal Marine. That next day, we're having lunch. I have a job offer by 5 p.m. on the front porch of their office. After hours, we the owner and myself met, had a really good conversation in seeing what it is that he is looking for. He's a single owner in a tugboat company, and this is his pride and joy. This is his market in the world. So working for somebody and knowing what their vision is rewarding, because then you can help get there, and they can sit back and watch their hard work really continue to grow and earn while they're out there diving for lobsters on their 32-foot sport fisher, moving from port to port, doing the Great Circle or whatever. So that was a big reason why I came over to Intercoastal, is seeing his vision, and he's given me a lot of reign to manage operations how I see fit with his guidance. And we don't always see eye to eye, but he's not looking for a yes man. He knows that I'm not a yes man. I'm probably the most contrarian person in the office, of just forcing people to think about what they say and what they do before we do anything. So that's been pretty cool. And Intercoastal, we didn't take that fast approach of, we have the money to go buy the assets right now. Let's not do that. Let's take a look at our current assets, replace what we need to, upgrade slowly, steadily, because fast growth, fast fall. Slow and steady growth is what we are really focused on. 1 or 2 boats, 1 or 2 customers a year. Just keep what you're doing and do it well, and find one more thing, and one more thing, and then one more thing. Don't try to chase every single thing that you can. Just do what you do well, move on to the next one. And just overall, the tug and barge industry, for those that don't know anything about it, listening to this podcast, there are more American mariners. So this is for the deckies and the engineers. More American mariners working on tugboats than there are on sailing Pacific, sailing Atlantic, sailing research vessels, tankers, box ships, ro-ros, everything that you've been told about maritime. And you're like, hey, go blue water, go blue water, go blue water. There are more brown water mariners out there than you could ever imagine. So I fully challenge anybody who doesn't believe that to go get on marinetraffic.com and filter tugboats, and then turn it off, and then filter tankers. And you're going to be amazed at this giant blue line of tugboats all up and down the Mississippi River, the West Coast, the East Coast. It's pretty impressive. So don't take that out of your realm of opportunity. You may have to start off as a deckhand. That's a tough pill to swallow for any deckie. And I'm talking to the licensed majors right now. Hopefully you guys are getting some of these guys to listen, because they could learn from some of this. Listen to a business kid that they know what they're doing. You might have to start off as a deckhand, but realize you spent 4 years behind books, not 4 years behind the wheel. The guys that are driving tugboats are docking and undocking all the time. They're maneuvering more frequently than you are. And same thing with the engineers. You spent 4 years behind the books, a little bit more hands-on. I got to give the engineers that they're pretty hands-on. in their studying, but you haven't been in a situation where your primary generator has shut down. You go to fire up your secondary generator and she's shut down, and the entire boat's in the dark, and they're coming up on a turn on the Mississippi River, and they got 25 barges in front of them, half a mile long, quarter mile wide, coming up on a turn. Hey, engineer, figure it out. You don't want to be the guy right off the bat. So deckies, you don't want to be mates in a bad situation. You want to be mates in a bad situation, and you've been there as a deckhand. Engineers, same thing. You started off as the junior guy in the engine room, and something bad happens. So you learn from that situation, move up to the next one. So there's my spiel to the deckies and the engineers. Don't turn away tugboats on applications and things like that. Plus, the industry allows mariners to be more relevant in their home life. So one thing that scared me away from being blue water, I'm being fully honest here, I didn't want to be gone for 9 months.
Yep, same here.
It's birthdays, it's holidays, it's weddings, it's as if everything at home moves on without you. And when you get home, everyone's like, oh, cool, like super pumped that you're home. And you're like, Monday through Friday, you're like, cool, let's go out and do stuff. Let's go out and see things. And everyone's like, no, dude, I got a 9 to 5. I gotta pay my bills. I'll see you on Saturday. And you're like, well, 5 out of 7 days I'm sitting at home by myself. Like, now I'm picking up, like, learning to smoke on my Traeger. Like, you're doing
Which isn't a
stupid
bad
things
skill,
to fill your time. Tugboating, our side is 28 and 14, 28 days on, 14 days off, 20 days on, 10 days off, 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. It allows you to stay more relevant. And think about it. If a birthday happens in the middle of your 2-week hitch, move it forward 1 week or move it back 1 week. That's not a big shock to the system, but you can't move Christmas 4 months later.
Yeah.
That's something, if you get homesick a lot, I mean, that'll offer that lifestyle to you. And I mean, honestly, in Norfolk Harbor alone, there are 11 tugboat companies. Don't even try to count the tugboat companies in New York Harbor. Add a little bit of Boston. There's not much tugboat activity up there, but move down to Houston, New Orleans, Pensacola, Tampa, Corpus Christi, entire West Coast.
Yeah.
There are thousands of tugboats, thousands of companies that need American mariners. I can't hire enough people. Absolutely, full stop. So the high school kid who's like, I don't know what I'm gonna do with my life. You want a guaranteed job? Get in the marine industry, suck it up, buttercup, enjoy and embrace the suck for a couple years. And you're gonna be making 6 figures working for 6 months by the time you're 30. You guys would be amazed at how many people come to me saying, I want to make $250 a day. I've got a third Mates Oceans Unlimited thing, or I've got an engineer's horsepower unlimited. I'm like, cool. Don't care, because one, I don't need a licensed engineer. I need somebody who actually knows how to fix something. And
Yeah.
2, you can have a third Mates Ocean Unlimited all you want, but until you have your towing endorsement, you can't drive a tugboat. Bigger license don't mean jack. I'll pay you deckhand wage and train you up, and I'll move you up quickly. So I guess to kind of do this whole sales spiel for maritime and tugboat industry and wrap it all into one, take the $150 a day job, work as hard as you can, pick up as much work as you can, set yourself apart from your peers, and the money will come. I can guarantee it from experience. I started out in London making $40,000 a year, and I am proud to say that I lived in a house with 17 other people on the west side of London, because, dude, I'm an American in London, lived it, cool. Yeah, it was a struggle.
Yeah.
10 years later, I'm living very comfortably. I've got a baller truck. I own my house. There's not much in material that I'm not happy with or I want. But I sucked it up for the first couple of years, really tried hard to move constantly, improve constantly, get to a position where I fit the best. And I stress this to the guys that I hire, even coming out of maritime schools, because I've had 2 maritimers from other schools. So Mass Maritime, I'm shouting out to you guys, step it up, come see me. Because when you guys show up and you guys do the job, I'll get you from a $200 a day deckhand to a $600 a day captain in 4 years or less. So by the time you're 25, you're making $100,000 a year working 183 days.
Yeah, I mean, sounds pretty good to me.
Yeah.
And it seems like a great opportunity. And I think just to like wrap it into like our shoreside audience, I think it's just as important to think about it from a shoreside perspective and think that, because we all know it, right? At Mass Maritime, sharing your salaries is a thing. And it probably is at a lot of colleges, like, oh, just got this job offer, it's this much, I'm not taking it, not enough. Or I got this job offer. Everyone knows who has the best job offer coming out of school, right? So I think it's important to also look at it on that shoreside perspective and say, hey, and we kind of talked about this earlier, like if it's a less paying opportunity, but that growth is there, which is exactly what you're talking about right now, that growth potential, take it, like just swallow that pride or that everyone always talks about from maritime, like, oh, and think that you're like too good for an entry level position because you came from maritime. There's people from other colleges that are going to take that position and they're going to go faster than you. So the whole like Mass Maritime is greater than all these other schools. It's just not true. Like we have great experiences and we all, we're all working out pretty well, but it's nothing, it's nothing extraordinary compared to other programs. And it's all about the mindset and that really where it comes into play.
You still got to do the work.
Yeah.
Because somebody's
you got to drive to win. You got to want to constantly better yourself. And I mean, I'm going to wrap it up with this. It's going to be an offer to any business kid. Now I'm going to make this specific to business kids. I got to leave one for the major that got me where I'm at. Any business kid that comes to me with a merchant marine credential, with an OS endorsement, ordinary seaman endorsement, basic level, you come to me and say, hey, I want to play deckhand. I want to learn the tugboat business from the deck up, and then I want to come shoreside in 5 years. I'll hire you on the spot.
That's great.
You heard it here. Open Water Podcast.
Absolutely.
Job offer.
Yeah.
Because you said the golden thing. I want to learn it from the deck up. Yeah. Don't think you can jump into the middle of it and think you know what you're doing. I didn't.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we'll definitely spread that word and for sure let all of our viewers know. I really do think that it is a great opportunity. It's something that, like I said, I was in this industry and it was something that was actually talked about for me. Like, hey, like maybe you do want to go on a tug and do it. And I was all for it. I thought that was going to be a great opportunity. I ended up leaving before it came to fruition, but it's an opportunity that you probably wouldn't get elsewhere is being able to go on a tug, get that boots on the ground experience, see what the calls that you're going to make when you're shoreside, what do they actually mean? You have no idea until you're boots on the ground, exactly what's going on. So yeah, I really appreciate it, Alex. We really thank you for coming on. I think all viewers of all majors, not even maritime specific, will get value out of this for their careers and their progression. So thanks again, Alex. We really appreciate it. We'll stay in touch for sure.
Anytime I can help, guys.
Oh yeah.
Networking at all times.
All right.
Talk to you soon.
All right. Talk to you later. Bye.
Bye.